section there. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stefan Judka. He is our sales manager, and he has been with Maine Solar Solutions for several years now. Stefan, take it away.
Thanks, Liz. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Here to learn a little bit about solar. So we're going to do kind of some background on solar generally to get some grounding, pun intended. A little bit about Maine Solar, who we are, what we do, and then we'll take a look at some different financing purchase options for projects because it's changed. It's changed substantially with the residential solar tax credit expiring at the end of 2025. There's some new options out there for homeowners that can line up really well. So agenda, right, we'll start with the intro to our company, a little bit about us, how net metering works in Maine, which is how you benefit from solar. We'll talk about the cost of an average system and then different purchase options. So Maine Solar, we've been in business since 2012, about 45 employees. We have over 3,000 installs in the state. And these range, there's a wide variety of solar projects out there. Grid-tied projects, very different from off-grid in the middle of the woods, residential, commercial projects, as well as new construction, all which have some different considerations in how we design and approach them. So why bother thinking about solar? I think the strongest argument financially is you're pre-purchasing your electricity. So you're taking this variable cost every month, and that the bill you get from CMP, and it seems to be variable only one direction, right? Over time, it seems like it keeps on increasing and increasing. I guess they did just have that price drop recently, a few dollars a month, but yeah, we'll see what happens with that later this year. I think there's a lot of pressures pushing electricity prices up, but it's that variability, right? Like that variability that you eliminate by going solar. You purchase the equipment, it makes your electricity, and that's your power. You paid for the equipment, you already bought it. And then once the system has generated enough electricity to offset the cost of it, then you're in the green. Literally, right? It's both like you're making money and then reducing your carbon footprint because the power created from solar panels is much better than burning natural gas or oil in some cases with peak power plants. So it's a way to reduce the impact on the environment. And solar is a step towards energy independence, right? You have the equipment producing electricity, so you're great at making power instantly. And in the future, you may think about adding a battery, which stores that power for when you need it. This is especially helpful for when the grid goes down. In Maine, we've got a lot of generators, and those are there to kick on, provide backup power when the grid's down. That's the function the battery provides. So battery plus solar, that battery is storing power and letting you use it when you need it. So those are the key benefits to looking at it. And then just a quick primer on how the solar policy in Maine works. So Maine has a really strong solar policy. If you look online, there's all kinds of different talk out there, different versions of different laws, and they change over time. But Maine has a really good one. So for every kilowatt hour, that's a unit of electricity, for every bit of electricity that's created on your roof, one of two things will happen to it. It'll either be used by your house right away, so that's power you are not buying, right? The other option is once your loads in your house are satisfied, the excess power will go out to the grid. So either you use it right away or you send it out to the grid through your meter. And as it leaves the meter, your utility sees it. It's like, okay, you're sending power out to the grid, and they give you credit for it. And it's a one-to-one exchange. So every kilowatt hour you send out to the grid, you get a kilowatt hour credit on your bill. So when nighttime rolls around, The solar panels aren't doing anything. So you're pulling electricity in from the grid. Instead of paying for that power, you spend the banked credit from the daytime, and that's your savings right there. If we zoom out and think about the whole year, the days are nice and long and sunny in the spring and the summer. So that's when the majority of our power is produced, right? So we're banking credits that time of year. You're exporting a lot of electricity to the grid, building up a bank of credits. And then in the wintertime, the solar is not as effective because the sun's lower and the days are a lot shorter. So you start spending through those banked credits. And, oftentimes a homeowner's goal is to fully offset their electric bill. So in that scenario, what we're trying to do is build up that credit bank just large enough so that, that home is spending through those credits right at the end of the winter, spending all the credits, and right before they start to rebuild that credit bank in March or April. And I say it that, we want to kind of perfectly size it that way because there's a catch to this policy. The catch is that the credits you make in any month are only good for the next 12 months. So it's kind of a use it or lose it situation, or put another way, it only makes sense to install solar panels you can use the power from. So there's no sense in oversizing unless there's a change coming along the horizon, like you're going to purchase an electric vehicle, put in more heat pumps, get a hot tub, get a sauna, right? Like do something that's going to really change that picture in the near future. Then it's, okay, well, let's figure out what that change might be. Let's add some more panels to cover it. And just I want a quick reminder what Liz mentioned earlier. If you have any questions that come into mind as we're going through, type them into chat and we'll talk about them at the end. Last week, we had a lot of really good questions at the end and it was super, super productive. So anything that's coming to mind, just throw it in there. We'll be happy to cover it here. Okay, so designing your system. So things that we consider when designing a project, first and foremost, like we were just talking about, how much power does your house use? That might be 100% of that might be our target, maybe less. We look at how much space is on the roof, how steep is your roof, what direction is your roof facing. Our ideal orientation or azimuth is 180 degrees south, so that roof gets good sun in the morning and good sun access through the afternoon. And as we move away from south, right, the east-west roofs, it's not like they're bad, right? It's just not as efficient as a south-facing roof. And maybe it's 10% less effective to put a panel on an east-west roof. And that percentage varies based on how steep the roof is. So like a really steep 12-12 pitch roof that's facing east-west, that east roof is only going to get good sun in the morning. And that's it. It's going to lose it pretty quick as the sun rolls through the sky. So if it's a really shallow east-west roof, that same orientation, the same east facing, will keep the sun later in the day. So it's going to make more solar on average. Another really big factor in production is shading. We've got a ton of trees in Maine, so that's a reason we come out to the site to get really good site data. We want to know how big of an impact those 3 tall pine trees are on your roof, and maybe we don't put any panels on a certain part of your house because the shading's too much. And finally, where is your home located? That will obviously play a big factor in how much sun the home gets. Okay, so ROI, return on investment, financially, when does the system break even? The main factors that go into that are kind of similar to the design factors in a way, but here we're talking more about the equipment. So one of those factors for ROI is the efficiency of the property, like we were just talking about, the cost of electricity. So over time, as electricity gets more expensive, earlier I was talking about the credits with net metering. Those credits are kilowatt hour credits. So they offset whatever the going cost of power is. So if the cost of electricity goes up, great, your solar system, those credits are saving you more money, and the system's paying for itself faster. There's a lot of equipment on the market, so different panels, different inverters will affect the upfront cost, and then how long it takes for the system to pay for itself, and then whether how you're purchasing it, whether you're buying it outright or financing it or looking at a lease option. So there's a number of factors that will change the ROI. If we're looking at the quote unquote average home, average is funny because it's an average, nobody's really truly average. It's the funny thing about it. But pretty typical system that we see for a home, it's using about 650 kilowatt hours a month, which translates to a $185 a month bill. If it has a somewhere decent roof for solar panels, we use about 14 of them. The install costs $23,601, and it would take about 10 years to pay for itself. So, obviously there's much larger solar systems and much smaller solar systems that we install. And really, customizing it is a big part of our process in working with us in the kind of exploring, right, what makes sense here, right? Because every single home is so different, both in the site factors and what the goals are for the project. So there are a few different financing options out there, like I mentioned right at the top of the call. And we're going to put them into three main buckets here. Cash, a direct purchase, paying for the system outright. Financing the project with a solar loan, which is will be very familiar. Our partner will do a fixed interest rate over 20 years. And finally, this is the newest option that we're offering. It's a program called Propel, which combines two different agreements, both a loan agreement and an energy services agreement. So we'll break that down in a second here. You know what? Before we go to that table, I want to talk a little bit more about Propel, because I think that table will make sense after we talk about it a little bit. So right here then, Propel. Okay, so I mentioned the two agreements, the first one being a loan agreement. That loan agreement finances the entire cost of the project. So everything for the whole entire project, there's no surprises, there's no extra fees or penalty fees or buyout fees. It's all baked into this one loan. So you have a consistent monthly payment for the project. So that is the first agreement. The second one is where it gets interesting, the energy services agreement. So this one is temporary. It lasts 5 years, and it dictates the ownership of the system. So technically, for the first 5 years of the system being on your roof, on paper, you don't technically own it. Technically, it's owned by a third-party company, and that 5-year window allows them to prove they own it and critically take tax credits. So the commercial solar tax credit is still available. So they can benefit from that because it's their system, this third-party company. And they can benefit from other incentives like depreciation. So they can receive those incentives. And in return, what you get is a lower principal on the loan, right? Your loan amount is lower because they know they're going to get those benefits, right? So they're kind of passing on to you. You sign for a smaller loan principal. So indirectly, a homeowner in Maine using the Propel option is benefiting from solar tax credits. They're not taking the tax credits themselves, but that company is, and the homeowner is getting a lower monthly payment. So oftentimes with leases or power purchase agreements, offered by other companies, you don't always retain the full value of the power the system creates. That's what's really nice about Propel is you get all of the value from the system, all the credits with CMP, right? Those are really, truly yours. The equipment's on your roof. You're receiving the full benefit from it. You're not having to buy that power from that third party owner, right? So they're really, it's about as simple as it gets. In that short term window, that 5-year window is really good because it's a way out. It's a way for that third party owner to exit the picture, and the system really truly becomes yours. That is one of the biggest challenges with leases, in my opinion, is they'll have a term of 25 years. And then at the end of 25 years, you're kind of stuck either buying that system out, extending the lease longer. It's just the end of life question is a little sticky. So with Propel, that was, really, it was really, really appealing for us. Is it's really truly a path to ownership. It's a path to owning the equipment and still benefiting from the commercial solar tax credit. So it brings a lot of good pieces together. Okay, I'm going to bring this table up now. So there are 2 things to know about Propel in this right column here. Let me find my mouse. So the 2 details to be aware of upfront. One, during that first 5 years, you got to leave the system alone, meaning you can't have us add panels to it. You can't have us come out and add a battery. They want that system to be kind of exactly what it was on paper when they signed all these agreements, right? It's just that initial system. So it's not flexible for that first 5 years. You're really locked into that project. The second kind of detail to be aware of with Propel is if you were to sell your home, you're creating an extra bit of paperwork, an extra headache, an extra hurdle in that home sale process, right? I guess you are just, when you're purchasing a home, you're signing a million pieces of paper anyways, but it adds a little friction to that process, right? So there is a way for the buyer to assume that energy services agreement, but it's a little messy. You have to explain the process, right? The buyer has to understand it and trust that this is going to make sense for them. So there's that option, or you can, buy out, you can pay a fee and just be done with that energy services agreement. But I think really the best path for Propel is if you're planning on being in the home for 5 years, right? If you can be there for that 5 years, run that timer out, great. Now it's just an asset on your roof. And the loan, right? That loan that's financing this whole project, you can pay it off like any loan, or you can stick with it and make that monthly payment every month. So it's funny. What's funny about this Propel agreement, I think what's the hardest thing to understand about it is the loan doesn't dictate ownership. It's this energy services agreement that dictates the ownership for the first 5 years, right? It's like, okay, so the first 5 years, this third party owns it, and then that goes away, and then it looks at the loan. And if you're still making payments on the loan, right, it's on your roof, and you owe the bank to pay it off. But if you're ever in a position to refinance that loan or pay it off entirely, you're able to do that. There's no prepayment penalties. And if you can pay it off faster, great. That means you've saved a bunch of interest costs, which is nice. So, there's a lot of detail there with Propel. And if any parts of that didn't make sense, or you want to hear me talk about it again, just throw some questions in the chat and I'm happy to circle back to that. The other 2 options are a little more traditional, but I do want to chat about them a little bit here. I mentioned the solar loan offered by one of our partners. They're a credit union, so they do a 20-year loan. Their interest rate's at 8.5% right now, 8.49%. Again, no prepayment penalties. There's a very small origination fee. It's a few hundred. I think it's $425 now. So there is some added cost to that on top of the interest, but not as crazy as some loans that are out there, including some solar loans that can be much more expensive. And then finally, right, cash purchase. You're paying for the system outright. It's right, you own it. It's on your property, and that's that. So I think that's the simplest one. All right, let's see what's next here. So, right, these are kind of as a review, 3 options we talked about here: cash direct purchase, the solar loan, and then Propel. And again, happy to circle back to any of those if you've got questions on them. And really, what's the best option? What's right for you is going to depend on your goals, your project, budget, the timeline, and our solar consultants are happy to chat with you about that. Obviously, we can't make these decisions for you, but we can throw ideas out there. And our goal here is really to educate you about what's out there, what's possible, so that you can make the right decision for you and your family. Right, purchasing up front isn't always viable. It is the least expensive way to do it overall, but sometimes it makes sense to finance the project even for a couple of years, right, and then work on paying it off as quickly as possible. And regardless of how you're paying for it, what the equipment is, who's doing the work, how it's warranted, all of those details matter as well. So to throw some of those out there, these are the qualities that we recommend looking at when you're evaluating the project. First and foremost, who's doing the work, right? They're going to be on your roof. They're going to be in your basement at the electric panel, right? There's going to be a lot of work happening there. So you want to know that the electricians doing the work are licensed and have experience with solar. Solar is a little different than a lot of electrical work. It's DC electricity, different parts of the code, right? So there are some details there to know and get right. Who's doing the work? Are these folks who are coming in from out of state and are going through a whole tranche of projects in the summertime, or are they folks who live locally and are going to be around in the future? That detail absolutely matters. I mentioned earlier that we come out and do on-site assessments as part of our design process. So we actually come out with a drone, fly the property. That lets us render a 3D model and see, okay, how big is the house? What's the roof space? Where are these trees, right? So we can really dial in on what's the best setup for the home. Warranties are absolutely important. There's a lot of different solar manufacturers out there. It really does run the gambit. So knowing what those warranties look like, as well as what is the installer offering. So workmanship warranties absolutely matter. And then finally, what's the reputation? Have they done a lot of work? Do they know what they're doing? Are there references? Right? All these details matter. So these are the points that we try to excel on. And I think we absolutely deliver on those. So here we are. We've arrived towards the end, or our question and answer portion here. So Liz, have we had any questions come up in the chat along the way?
We have. The first one is there a minimum time restriction regarding how soon you are allowed to pay off the Propel loan?
There is not. No, you can pay it off right away. As soon as the loan starts, you can pay it off.
We did have one question. Is there a mechanism or a law in place that forces CMP or Versant to honor net metering?
Right now, it's a state policy. So yes, it's state policy that is enforced by the Maine Public Utilities Commission, and it may change over time. Agreements that are being signed today, they have a term of 20 years, which is a good long while. So that's kind of what's written in paper. And then we can look at what's the precedent. So if we look at other states, California is a decent example. They've gone through several versions of net metering. Every time they've gone to a new policy, they've always grandfathered in the old or the prior policies. So that's also happened in Maine. When LePage was governor, we had a different solar policy for a bit. And then after he left office, we went back to the policy we still have today, right? This one-to-one net metering credit. And while LePage was governor, the older projects prior to his administration, those agreements were grandfathered in. So, I can't say with any certainty that because you have net metering today for the solar on your roof, that you'll always have it. But there is a lot of, I, I'm very certain that there's going to be net metering for years to come once you have the system installed. And if that policy were to change, we should see these systems be grandfathered in at the same policy.
We have a couple more questions that have come in. One person said, I believe you mentioned that the Propel program was overall the least expensive option. Can you explain why one more time?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it has to do with the tax credits, and the commercial solar tax credits are still around, and they're substantial. It's 30% of the project cost, and it can go higher. It can be up to 50%. That's not typical in Maine, but I think 40% is pretty typical for the Propel projects and how we're quoting it, just to give you a sense of scale of how large this tax credit is. So these companies, they're not delivering you a 40% lower project costs. And that's maybe the detail I glossed over earlier, is these companies know that they're getting that tax credit. So in return, your price for the project is lower. The loan that you're signing for when you're committing to the project, that is significantly lower than it would be otherwise if you were to, say, purchase the same exact system from Maine Solar directly and have us install it. So that's the detail, is those companies know about that tax credit, and they're giving you a lower cost project upfront that you sign for. And they're expecting over 5 years to receive those tax incentives and to, make it worth it for them. And where I was going a second ago, they're not passing on a 40% tax credit to homeowners. They're obviously taking their slice of profit and whatnot along the way. And what's really interesting to see happen is the equipment that we need to specify for these projects. So the tax credit now has a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. There's two main hoops. One is related to FEOC compliance, which is foreign entities of concern. Basically, making sure that not too much of the panel is sourced from China, basically, and there's a bunch of other countries on that list. So that's one set of hoops. The other set of hoops is making sure that the equipment is, a good chunk of the equipment is manufactured in the US, which is good. So it's trying to incentivize US-based manufacturing and assembly. So it's pretty specific. These requirements for the tax credit are pretty specific, and it requires the manufacturer to do a bunch of work. And when they do it, when they achieve that product that meets these tax standards, they know it meets those tax standards, and they charge more for it. So there's that factor as well is kind of working against the bottom line savings for homeowners, right? The manufacturers know that their product is worth more because somebody's going to get a tax credit on it. So they're charging more for the equipment. So that's kind of working against the best price for the homeowner at the end of the day. But that tax credit is so significant that there's still savings there. And when we were first looking at the Propel option, it was absolutely the lowest cost option. And it does tend to change over time. Like, right now we have some equipment that you could buy from us directly that would actually be a hair less expensive than what we can offer through Propel. And that's going to change over time, right? Because we're always looking at the market. We're trying to find what's the best quality equipment that's at a good price, so we can bring the best value to our customers. So I think over time the lowest cost may change. Like I said, right now we do have some options that are a little less expensive than Propel. It's very close, but I expect that'll change over time as more manufacturers make tax credit worthy equipment, and what we can source on the market. It's a lot of things changing right now, including in the solar market. So that was a long-winded answer to the question, but hopefully it was helpful. And if it wasn't, please let me know. I'd love to take another stab at it.
We also have, what are the payment options for the battery component of battery plus solar system? And can you have a battery with each of those payment options?
I want to start second part first. You can have a battery with each of these options. The Propel is pretty specific in which battery. It has to be a battery from Enphase and a particular model number from them. And to be fully transparent, Maine Solar has not installed an Enphase battery before. We've been happy with the battery offerings we've had in the past, so we actually haven't done one, but we'd love to try it. So we are offering it, but there's just fewer options than we typically have if you're working with Propel. If you're doing a cash purchase or financing with a typical loan, then we could look at an Enphase battery or a Tesla Powerwall or a Franklin A Power battery. And Liz, can you remind me the first half of the question there? I think I forgot it.
Sure. It was, what are the payment options for the battery component? So I think this person is asking whether the battery can be included in a cash, a loan, or Propel.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can. It's just really the Propel is the only one that has the caveat. A Powerwall or a Franklin battery, those could be financed as well. There used to be a distinction. It's actually a really interesting question because it used to be we weren't allowed to finance batteries, and I can't remember the details on that. It was some years back, but that isn't a limitation anymore. So it's a little easier now.
You think you touched on this at one point, but maybe not. This person is asking, how much lower is the loan principal on average with Propel compared to a traditional loan?
Principal on average. So that question kind of compares what equipment do we have? Like, what could you buy directly from Maine Solar that we found out there in the wide world versus what does Propel deliver to you as that bottom line price? So right now it's within $1,000, depending on how large the project is. And sometimes it's as little as a few $100s, the difference between financing with Propel and the traditional solar loan. And I'm thinking the question was for the principal, which is a good way to put that. I'm going to add to that Propel's interest rate ranges from 7.79 to 9.79%, depending on your credit score, whereas our credit union partner is at 8.5%. So oftentimes folks are getting a slightly better interest rate with Propel. And these are not the only two financing options out there. Like you're more than welcome to talk to your bank or credit union and see what they offer. I saw a headline the other day that interest rates are coming down and that might be helping the mortgage market. I don't know how true that is. I have not looked at that. But years past, it was really common for folks to take out a home equity line of credit to finance a solar project. That was basically the only thing we saw for a number of years. So there are certainly more options out there. So if you can find an interest rate through your bank or credit union that's lower than 7.8%, great. Maybe it makes sense to go that route and then look at some of the equipment that we can offer. So I don't have a blanket statement to answer the question necessarily, but like right now we do have some really good equipment that we were able to purchase at a really good price because the solar market's changing and this tax credit situation.
So this question is, can you give us an example of the cost of the three options with the average installation? And I feel like that one might be a little involved to try to.
Oh, wow, that is a really good question, though. I'm intrigued. Answer is no, I can't do that offhand. But I think the next time we do this, Liz, I'm going to work on putting something together because I think that would be a really interesting comparison.
I agree. The last question, I think this person might have possibly misunderstood a little bit, but so if someone is asking if they've already put a third down, can they qualify for Propel if they're going to go the cash option?
You can switch from a direct purchase to Propel. I think we've had somebody do that because they wanted to change their panel, like from a silver frame panel to a black frame panel, and it made sense in that situation. Yeah, so in that case, talk to your solar consultant. If it's me, talk to me, and we can absolutely chat about it. And look at the quote, look at the system you are moving forward with right now, and maybe it makes sense to look at Propel as an alternative. But the short answer is yes, we're absolutely open to that, and it may line up better for you. Or I couldn't say what your project's at right now, but absolutely your solar consultant will be happy to take a look at that with you.
We have one more kind of general question about what brands of panels, inverters, and racking we typically install.
Racking is basically always Iron Ridge. Inverters, it's either Solar Edge or Enphase inverters. Sometimes we'll work with a Tesla, SMA, Fronius string inverter, and then different for commercial projects. And then the panel types, Silfab, Q-Cell, Hyundai, SEG. Those are our primary ones right now.
And last question, if someone is interested in having us come out and do a site assessment, what is sort of the process for that?
Head to our website and click through the schedule a site assessment. So then we'll ask for some of your contact info. You'll hear from Erica or Pauline on our leads team, and they'll get you set up with a proposal review with one of our solar consultants, as well as a drone flight. So we'll have one of our drone pilots come out and fly the property. So that's the best way to get rolling and see what the options are. It is totally no cost. We don't, obviously you pay for the project, but to get a quote, have a really detailed conversation to evaluate what the options are, all totally free. So we'd love to come out.
Well, thank you very much, Stefan. We don't have any more questions. To the folks on the call, we'll be sending out a recording by end of day Friday of this call, and you can always reach back out to us either at our main number or at info@mainsolarsolutions.com. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.